Welcome back to the Piping Pasture. Well, today I thought we'd have another one of our little wee live chats. So, no introductory video. We fire up the flamethrower. Today I'm smoking my plum pudding bourbon barrel aged reserve. And I'm smoking it in my my Peterson Killarney Red at Dublin. I'm pretty sure I was smoking this the last video I recorded. I have not been smoking it continually. I've, in point of fact, yesterday I was enjoying some Sutliff Revelation match on my back porch because the weather's been rather nice. And in my defense, I have the larger than normal flame in my Zippo because I have a few pipes with a really deep bowl, and it's easier to get it down when I'm doing the relights later on. Additionally, it's helpful, I found, when it's really windy outside, to get the big flame going. So I expand my wick when I pull the Zippo out a little bit, so it gets that big long flame. But yes, Cliff, I will admit that occasionally, like right after I fill it, the flame gets a little ridiculous. Be the first one to admit that. Speaking of my brother Cliff, I would like to send a big thank you for your very kind words. And of course, a hearty welcome to all those of you who have recently joined my channel. The YTPC is a really rather large community, and until you really get into it and start watching a lot of these videos and perhaps starting your own channel and sharing some of your own thoughts and so forth, you don't realize how big it is, and additionally how supportive it is. It's a shame in some ways that so many of us are so spread across the country and the world. And I had a comment from a gentleman from South Africa, and then of course we have all of our fellow pipe smokers over in Britain. So it'd be lovely if we were all co-located and we can get together in person. But in lieu of that, I think that this online community is very helpful. It's nice to reach out and be able to share ideas and conversations. And I think Cliff is a wonderful facilitator of that. I recently subscribed to the Hoot and Briar on his recommendation and learned something new about Vincent Van Gogh. So there's always something new you can learn each and every day, and it's a wonderful community to belong to. So again, welcome if you're just joining, and thanks again to Cliff for the great recommendation. I shall do my best to live up to it, sir. Well, I thought today to have a wee chat on the difference between perseverance and stubbornness, because the two can become rather easily conflated. In my ministry work, of course, I do a great deal of teaching and preaching and so forth, but what I spend most of my time doing is counseling, is offering that pastoral care and counseling to people. And I was recently having a conversation with someone about they're engaging in activities and really not enjoying them, not seeing any fruit of it, but not wanting to be considered a quitter. And so pushing through and pushing forward and sticking with it. And in some cases, that resiliency is a wonderful quality to have, to stick to something, to see it through. That is perseverance. When you're striving towards a goal and it's a realizable goal, and it's a goal that is worth your effort, and it's a goal that is helpful, it will leave a legacy, it will support someone else or some other such thing, and it's a worthy endeavor. Even though you're facing adversity, sticking through it and slogging through the path, even through the hard times, that's a good example of perseverance, and that's something that should be applauded. However, we oftentimes slide into stubbornness because we think we're just persevering. So let me explain my view of what the difference is and how we can understand that difference. In the Bible, we see in Numbers that God commands a census to be done, right? And it's because of God is demonstrating to the nation of Israel what has happened and where God has taken them and so on and so forth and where they are as a nation. Later on in the book of Samuel, we see that David also asked for a census to be done, and the nation of Israel gets cursed because of it. So it wasn't the census that God took issue with, because God had just a few books earlier done the same thing and asked for a census. It was David's heart when David asked for the census to be done. It says in point of fact that Satan rose up against David and got David to do a census. And it was all based in pride because David wanted to see where the nation of Israel was and see how wealthy he was, how many soldiers he had, and so on and so forth. So it wasn't the act, it was the heart behind the act. And you can do the same thing. You can look at it the same way when you're trying to discern if you're persevering or being stubborn. If whatever it is that you're pursuing, if it ceases to be about the goal and starts to be about the process, if you're focusing on the process and the goal is an afterthought, it might be that you're just stubbornly persevering. If it gets to the point where the goal is not worth the effort, i.e., the payoff at the end is not worth the effort that you're putting into it, then it can slide from perseverance into stubbornness. If the focus starts to be solely about your own personal gratification, your own pride, then it can slide from perseverance into stubbornness. And I can offer an example from my own life. I was in junior high and high school. I played football and I wrestled and so forth, and I competed in martial arts tournaments and so on and so forth. And I did fairly well on the football field. I did fairly well in full contact tournaments and point fighting and stuff. Wrestling was just not my thing. I was just not a good wrestler. The things that made me good in martial arts competitions, which is understanding linear lines of attack and quick strategies for in and out combat, don't play well in high school wrestling, because you can't have a single line of attack in wrestling. You have to have different options because someone else always comes up with something to counter your counter, right? So you have to be a little bit more fluid in the moment, because if you have one line of attack, it's easily for your opponent to discern that line of attack, and then they can throw a counter on it because they know you keep going after the same thing, right? If you're going for that half wing every time and you keep going after it and keep going after it, eventually they're going to say, oh, okay, well, now all I have to do is just slip around this way, and then boom, I've got him on his back. So I wasn't very good at that sport. But I was determined that I would not quit until I had won at least one invitational tournament. I could not stop until I had taken one of those medals, at least one, in one of those invitational tournaments where you have 5, 6 high schools all come together, right? It took me 3 years, 3 years of being in a sport I was not enjoying. I didn't like wrestling. Didn't really get along with my coaches. My teammates were kind of okay. A couple of them I played football with. But for the most part, I didn't like the practices. I didn't enjoy the meets. I didn't enjoy the process in any way whatsoever. So I put myself through that for 3 years. Now, some people may look at that and say, well, you persevered. If that were the case, then yeah, that would be a great example of perseverance. But I'll be honest with you, it was out of stubbornness. It was because I thought it was more important for me to get this thing done, for me to be seen as an invitational tournament winner than anything else. It wasn't about the process necessarily, but I got focused so much on the process that I could not achieve the goal. I slipped from persevering into being stubborn. And it's an easy thing for any of us to do. So if you happen to be engaging in something right now and you're going after it, you're going after it, you're going after it, and you're just not getting it, you're not getting it, you're not getting it, you can look to the wisdom of Einstein, right? And seeing perhaps if you're doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Or you could examine the situation that you're in and say, okay, is this really about the goal now? Or is this just become about me? Is it just about my own pride? Is it just about my own view? Is it not about being productive? Is it not about leaving a legacy? Is it not about supporting other people or helping someone else? Then you may want to re-examine your motives and decide if, perhaps it's not perseverance, perhaps it's stubbornness. And if it is in that case, then lay it down. You don't need to spend 3 years in wrestling practice. You can walk away and do something else. Well, that is it for this time. I'll be looking to get another video done this weekend, hopefully, because I'm not traveling again for at least a couple of months. Of course, I say that, and I'll probably get an emergency call next week and have to flit off somewhere. But I'm not planning to do any traveling for the next couple of months. So hopefully I'll get to do a few more of these in the coming weeks. So for those of you who joined the channel, again, thank you. I did want to say one more thing. My oldest daughter recently took a trip to Mexico and brought me back this wonderful little gift. It's a marble stone pipe. She was in the hopes that perhaps this was a smokable pipe. But like many of you, I engage in this hobby, and my family is not, I don't come from a family of pipe smokers, so they're not entirely sure what it is, how all these various different accoutrements operate. But she saw this and it was drilled out and everything, so she thought, perhaps, this was a smokable pipe. Alas, it is not. However, it is still a neat little thing. It's a great little souvenir. So what I use this for is to hold my matches. So it sits on my counter as a wonderful little testament to her thinking of me when she was out vacationing elsewhere. And it's a practical piece of decor. So, but I wanted to make sure I got that on there with a big thank you to her. She got this to me a few weeks ago, and I had not featured it in a video yet, so I wanted to make sure that was in there. But all right, so that is it for this time. So I hope you have a lovely week, and as always, happy reading.